As we've discussed previously, a camera doesn't quite see the world the way our eyes do. Our eyes are able to take a wider field of vision. Our eyes can sense depth, but a camera tends to flatten the way the world looks, and the sense of depth is lost somewhat in a photo frame. One way we'll try to defeat that tendency of the camera to flatten the world is by talking about using a vanishing point to add depth into our photos. Now, if you've taken art and have done some drawing, you perhaps have done 1 or 2 point perspective drawings. So, in these types of drawings, you make your images appear to have depth by using that vanishing point as a frame of reference to draw your lines. Perhaps you've drawn something like this, where there's a single vanishing point or single point perspective. Well, I'm going to show you some pictures that are similar to this, and I'm trying to point out that the idea of having a vanishing point or paying attention to the vanishing point is also important in photography. It helps us realize that we can create the sense or the illusion of depth in our photos, just like you can create the illusion of depth or the sense of depth in your drawings. Let's look at this example, and you notice that the dock is symmetrically placed in the frame right through the middle. The vanishing point ends, it appears right in the middle of the frame. And I'm not trying to say that a symmetrically composed photo is not a visually pleasing photo, but what I have been saying in class that is I would like you to experiment, would like you to try to do more asymmetric compositions. So a symmetrically composed photo is okay, and there's some great looking pictures, for example this one, but I want you to keep that in mind, that we're trying to steer you away from just symmetrically focused pictures and try and get you to place your subjects off center. Well, anyway, in this picture the dock extends out. The vanishing point, we can imagine, is placed behind the 2 ducks that you can barely see at the end of the dock. Notice the negative space surrounding the dock, the water, helps push our eyes towards the dock and into the middle of the picture. So there's a pretty good feeling of depth, that this is a 3-dimensional image. This one's very similar. We're focusing on the element of line here, the lines converging to a vanishing point. Here's another dock. The poles add to the sense of vanishing point. They add lines to this image. You know, it goes back to the idea of making average look great or making the ordinary look extraordinary. Sometimes we're limited by our environment as far as what we can take as far as interesting pictures. But we have to think as a photographer of using what we have available, doing more with less, for example. And so this simple ordinary dock was made to look very interesting just by the way it was composed or placed in the picture, extending to a vanishing point, and the bright sky in the background obviously helps our eyes draw towards that vanishing point. In this one, we have a subject, the man holding the bike in the distance there. Notice how the dock serves as a line to lead us to pay attention to our subject here. Notice all the empty space or negative space at the top here. That serves to push our eyes down more powerfully to where the focal point of this picture is taking us. Now this one's composed a little bit differently. The dock isn't set so the vanishing point is in the middle. The vanishing point is off to the side, and the dock serves as a powerful line guiding our eyes to the person at the end of the dock. So what I'm trying to get to is the technique of using lines to lead the eyes to our focal point or our subject. I'm going to show you some examples of this. In this picture, you see the blue arrows are showing you that the timbers in this bridge, the road, lines on the side here, lines coming down, are all tending to point towards our focal point or our main subjects here. So this picture was composed with that in mind, that there are lines in the environment that can be used to help steer our attention to our focal point. Now here's a senior, looks like a senior portrait, and I've seen a few of these where the photographer takes the person out to a railroad track and using the railroad track as powerful lines to lead us to the focal point or the image that we want the eyes to pay attention to. So railroad tracks are pretty powerful. Now there's basic horizontal and vertical lines. We shouldn't ignore those. In these two examples, I want you to notice that in this first picture, the camera was held like we normally hold it, horizontally. But in this case, on the second picture, the camera was turned or twisted to get that vertical shot. One thing that can help you direct which way you should hold your camera is to think about what lines are in your shot. In this one, we have a horizontal line, sky meeting water here, and so that leads us to think a horizontal picture is appropriate. In this case, the vertical lines of the building suggest that we should twist our camera so we can take that vertical effect. And there are curved lines. This picture is pretty famous. I think it's by Henri Bresson. And I just think this is a great composition. The curved lines with the multiple subjects here just lead our eyes farther and farther into the image to create that sense of depth and interest. Then there's the S curve. These are curved lines too. But if you can ever capture a S curve in the environment, S curves naturally are a powerful line that suggests depth. This sand dune here closest to the right side almost seems like it's going to leap out of the frame. This S curve in the railroad track really helps me forget the tendency of the camera to flatten the way the world looks. I totally forget about that when I look at this picture. It really seems to have a lot of depth to it to me. Then there are implied lines or invisible lines. I might call them eye lines. There's another famous picture. I think this is by Leo Friedman. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, we can see some obvious lines, the line formed by the arms, which helps our eyes to travel through the frame from left to right, or from corner to corner of the whole frame. There's the line of the fence right here. There's a line in the sidewalk here, kind of all helping us stay in line with the arms and directing our attention to the subjects here. Even the background, you could say, is a line in the back of these subjects that's helping direct our attention to our subjects. But what I want you to notice is the implied line. That's very powerful here. The eyes of the gentleman here are looking at our dominant subject here, their focal point, and this implied line with the eyes, the eye line, can be very powerful in photos. So when you're posing people, something you might want to try is to have, if you have multiple people, have some of the people look at just one of the people in the photo and see if that helps bring out attention to just one of the people. All right, well, that's a brief introduction to vanishing point and how lines can be a powerful way to make our pictures not appear flat, but to have depth. And when we add depth, our pictures tend to be more dynamic and more interesting. So give it a try. I'd like you to search for lines out in the environment, outside or inside, and then also try to take some pictures with leading lines, with lines leading to your focal point or to your subject.